Cindy Hodnett here at Las Vegas Market, and we are talking to somebody who's making a debut this market, Alex Shuford with Rock House family of brands, also known as Century and Highland House, right?
Hickory Chair and Hancock and Moore.
A lot of the guys, welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
So, first of all, let's just get right to it. Why was now the right time for
Why
Las Vegas?
Why now, right? It's interesting. So we've seen a lot of success in the last few years with our designer showrooms around the country, New York and Chicago, and Florida and Atlanta, and so we wanted a Western presence again. We used to have showrooms in LA and San Francisco, and we have great agents there right now, but we don't have our own showroom this far west where people can access it easily. And so Las Vegas gave us a nice, easy to get to destination where we could put a showroom in place with all of our brands and open it year round. So we're in Building A in the year-round design center. So that got us interested, and then obviously the show itself is sort of icing on the top of that. So a couple more times a year we can be in front of our customer. There's certainly a fabulous design business in the West that doesn't come to High Point as frequently as we would like. Maybe they're once every other market or once every 3, but it's so convenient to get to Vegas, and you can work the show in a day or two that we think we'll see a lot more of them. Yeah, and plus all my product people and my sales people, they get bored in those opposite poles of the year. We have East and West covered with April and October, but I needed them to have something to do in January and July. So yeah, they're all just jumping at the chance to be here in July.
So tell us a little bit about the way the showroom's laid out, because I went by there and took a look. It looks great. So when somebody comes in, how are they going to differentiate between the brands?
Well, the truth of the matter is our product works so well with each other. The different brands melt together nicely that until you look at the tag, you may not know. A lot of them are recognizable forms. You might see a Thomas O'Brien piece or a Ray Booth piece and recognize it right away. But a lot of the Highland House, Hickory Chair, Century mixes really well. Obviously, most of the leather that's in the showroom is from our Hancock and Moore brand. We have some of our more exotic pieces from Maitland Smith. If it's a swivel chair sitting on its own, it might be Jessica Charles, because those are the specialty brands. But the tentpole brands mix well, and so you'll have to look at the tag. And so what we did is we took about 10,000 square feet, and we went to one of the premier talents in the industry, Skip Rumley, and we said, Skip, we want to do a showroom in Las Vegas, and we want it to be from a single point of view, so that when you walk in, it feels harmonious. It feels like all the brands make sense with each other, because that's the way our customers use our brands.
It's the way they shop.
Hickory Chair cocktail table and a Century sofa, and they'll pull a chair from Hancock and Moore, and Highland House might get a couple of the accent tables, and all of a sudden you have this beautiful room. So let's show them how we would do that with our own pen, how we would draw that. And I think it came off really well. It's got a Western, casual, elegant feel to it, not lots of bright pops instead of very smooth. And we may change that seasonally, who knows, but it's what felt right for the moment. So.
I love it, I love it. Now, we were talking a little bit, and we were talking about educating the consumer. And I love what you said, so I'm going to get you to repeat as much of it as you're comfortable, but just the differentiation about defining why spending a little bit more on furniture is worth it, and what that threshold might look like.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we were talking about sofas in particular, right? And I'm an old upholstery guy, and my dad was for 40 years, so I come from that side of the business. So I always think in sofas, and so my analogy is you want something that is not going to disappoint you in 6 months or a year, right? And this day and age, that's probably going to be something over $2,000 or $3,000. But you also want to be careful you don't invest so much in your product that in 7 or 8 years, when the frame and the spring up and the cushions are still fine, but the fabric looks a little dingy and you're just sick of it, that you can't get rid of it because you spent $25,000 on that thing. And so there's a sweet spot in that, I would say, upper middle to affordable luxury price range in a, say, sofa category, maybe from $4,000 to $8,000, where you're going to love it for the 3, 4, 5 years of heavy use you're going to have with that sofa, and at the end of 5 years, it's not so precious that you can't change it out. And that's not to say we don't see $400 a yard COM be put on one of our sofas, and we know it's being sold for $15,000, $16,000. That customer exists, but oftentimes for that customer, that price isn't precious.
Right, exactly.
But for a lot of our typical customers, that would be a precious price point. And so if we can get them into that $5,000-$6,000 sofa, it gives them comfort, it gives them something to be proud about when they have company over, right? It can handle the kids playing trampoline on it, and then it can do a fast change to a night of cocktails and, and
you
cribbage.
Just gave the most brilliant talking points to a whole genre of
Well,
consumer.
you're kind. But I think that's true for lots of product categories. We talked about it. You have a car for 5-6 years and then you're swapping your car out, and you spend a lot more time in your bed and on your sofa than you do in your car.
Or the
right?
Chanel handbag.
Absolutely.
The Chanel handbag. Right?
If you just spend as much as you did on that Chanel handbag on a leather chair, you would love that leather chair and use it more than you would that handbag.
We just figured out everything
Done
right
done.
here.
That's exactly right. So.
Well, kidding aside, let's talk about 2025. There are a lot of issues on the horizon.
It's going to be an exciting year.
What's exciting?
directions.
What's concerning? Tell me what's on your mind.
Well, I mean, obviously there's a lot of sort of headline rhetoric out there right now. Tariffs are a major concern for the industry, and I would say should be a major concern for the consumer
Absolutely.
in general. And I think there's a lot of saber rattling to get people and partners to the negotiating table. And I've told our crowd, look, we don't know what this is going to look like for another 90 to 120 days.
Yeah.
And then there'll be some certainty. Markets can adjust to it. Every customer, every company, every buyer and seller can adjust to it. And I certainly don't think it's going to be anywhere near what we have heard as the sort of high threat numbers.
The headline grab.
That's exactly right. But that being said, we're all having to be a little bit cautious about how we handle our new product launches and try to prepare for what could be 10-15% tariffs on select products or certain countries.
What's your strategy for that?
Well, I mean, our strategy, fortunately, is that we are predominantly a domestic manufacturer. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have materials that are imported. A lot of fabric and leather is coming in from other countries, component parts and things of that nature. And we do import finished goods for Hancock and Moore, some of the Century, some of the hickory chair case goods, et cetera. And, what we feel comfortable with is that we've created a balance sheet and an economic situation for ourselves that mean we don't have to be immediate in a change in price if something happens on the global scene. So if we see 10, 15, 20% tariffs, we can wait until the appropriate time to then readjust our pricing. So it's not a sudden shock where somebody wakes up on a Monday after a Friday news cycle and goes, oh my goodness, everything I was about to spec for my client's job is more expensive because they put in a force majeure price increase. So we plan to weather that for a bit. Obviously if something extreme goes in place, we won't be able to weather it permanently. But I'm also a believer that anything that we do on that side of trade will lower demand for things like containerized freight. And we'll have some offsetting reductions in costs. And until all of that flesh, goes through the pipe, evens out, we don't really know what the final number will be.
Still us wait and see.
Will there be some absorption on the supplier side, the factory side? If it's a 20% tariff, is the real number 13? Is there a container freight reduction of 4 or 5% on that item? Is the then number 9 and not, we just, until it all plays out, right now we're just speculating and fear-mongering.
Yeah.
Let's wait until we see what happens and then we'll react to it appropriately. And on the sort of more optimistic side,
the opportunity
side, I feel like there is an enormous amount of pent-up demand or housing tension in the country right now. People want to move around. People get just as uncomfortable in the house they've been in for 8, 10, 12 years as they do in the car they've been in or the sofa they've been in. And that sort of pent-up tension or demand is going to unspool and get released at some point in the next year, in my opinion. And I think the big triggering event will be when we see mortgage rates break below 6 and get back into the 5s. We're not going to see 3% and 3.5% and 3.75% mortgages probably in my career again, I think. But I think we could breach 6% again and be in the upper 5s, and I think that psychological step down back into a 5 starting number would be a big unleash for housing demand. You've got older people wanting to get rid of their suburban houses, they want to move into cities. You got younger people that are ready to start households and they want that suburban house, but everybody's locked into a mortgage that they don't think they can change. And when you're looking from 3 to 7, That's a big jump. It's more than
huge
double.
jump.
But from high threes to fives, mid fives, I think people will make that leap. And I think we're probably not far from it. Again, 10-year treasuries really being kind of held up by fear of inflation. Fear of inflation is really being sort of generated by having this tariff discussion swirling around, and even some of what we fear is going to be inflationary labor changes.
Yes.
Once that settles and we know what it looks like, I think we'll start to see the 10-year treasury, the yield curve change. I think mortgage rates will follow. The Fed will probably pause while all of that concern about inflation exists. But second half of the year, I imagine they will get back to a steady diet, a quarter rate points cuts, and and all of that is pro-growth. And regardless of how you feel about our current administration, and I'm agnostic. It is likely a pro-business administration, which will probably unleash gains in the stock market and should be generally pretty good for the American economy. So I still feel, and our team still feels like we've got a 3-4 year run in the U.S. economy that should be pretty strong, coming off kind of the artificially low period where we were dealing with the opposite of the surge. We had to have a kind of, we call it a rain shadow.
Yeah,
all
absolutely.
the storms dumped all their business on us right after the pandemic, and everybody was trapped at home. And then after that, the clouds were, they were low moisture. We weren't getting a lot of rainfall, and we are building back up that business now. We had a good year last year. We expect a very good year this year.
A lot of questions, but also a lot of opportunity.
I think it's a ton of opportunity, and probably the biggest thing that we sit back and say, now be prepared for, would be another black swan event.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah.
But we were laughing and crying the other day in a sales meeting. In my career, I've now survived 4 or 5 black swan events.
The expert.
Yeah, the once in 1,000-year storm happens every other year, right? And that's sort of the reality of the current business climate. Is that there's going to be a black swan event next year or two, and I don't know whether it'll be birds coughing on us or whether it'll be somebody sending ships to some strait somewhere and blocking trade routes. But the reality is you've got to be a company durable enough to deal with that, and the consumer will have momentary shocks when that happens. But they will get back to leading a normal life pretty quickly because we still wake up every day, brush our teeth, eat breakfast, go to work, do what we do. Right?
Absolutely.
Watch our shows at night on our sofas. So, buy better sofas.
That just right sofa.
That's right. That just sweet spot sofa.
Well, congrats on the new showroom.
I really appreciate it.
It is great, and we're going to keep tracking what you guys have going on and watch what happens.
We're excited to be here, and so it's going to be a fabulous Vegas, and they're going to turn the temperature up for us about 10 degrees, we hope. And
there we go.
And we're going to have a great time. Thanks
Alex,
a lot, Cindy.
Thank you. Stay tuned.